Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I am joined by a very, very special guest, my girlfriend, and we are going to be going over some of our favorite couples from books we have read. All right, you want to start us off because the first book on this list is actually one we were both going to have, so you can go ahead and start.
All right, I'll start us off. I do want to give a mild spoiler warning, so I'll name the book. If you haven't read it and you are looking forward to it, you want to go into it knowing absolutely nothing, you might want to skip ahead just a little bit. But the book is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman, and the couple is Ove and Sonia. So Ove is our main character, and Sonia is his wife. And the reason I love this couple so much is because Ove is very set in his ways as a human being, even from a young age. And he is a little bit curmudgeon-y and a little bit crotchety, but he meets Sonia and she just brings warmth and light into his life. And really, they just are so meant for each other. They're really the perfect example of opposites attract. And when Sonia dies, Ove just loves her so much that he doesn't want to go on living without her. And I know that's a little bit morbid, but I just think it's so precious. And if you haven't read the book, I highly encourage that you do. Bring your tissues. You'll need them.
Yeah, and fun fact about this, we actually both read this like right when we started dating. And I actually recommended this, that she read it after I finished it. And this is a book that I personally love a lot. It's number 3 of all my books I've ever read, I think. It's at worst top 5. So just give you a little bit of an idea of how good of a book it is. Now, my first couple is going to be, and this spoiler warning pretty much for all of these, the way, fantasy and other books are with couples, a lot of times there are spoilers. So once again, just skip ahead when I mention a book or a series because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But the first couple for me comes from the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and that is Shallan and Aethelon. Aethelon is like a giant golden retriever. He cares about how he looks, but is also just like this awesome warrior, great guy who is just a ball of positive energy and, somebody that I would want to hang around with and like be friends with. And then Shallan is this awesome, smart, and creative woman who, has questionable motives at the start of the series, but I think their relationship really grows and blossoms. I have some very heartbreaking theories of what's going to happen in Stormlight 5 revolving these two, which is really unfortunate, but this is a great character relationship, and I think it's one of the better ones Sanderson has written.
All right, my next couple is a little bit of a hot take couple, and it is from the Harry Potter series, which I'm sure most of you have probably read and or seen the films. And let me first start off by saying that I am a Ron girly. I definitely preferred his character to Harry. And so my next couple on this list is Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger from none other than Harry Potter. Again, I know that's a hot take. I know a lot of people wanted Harry to end up with Hermione. And I will say I don't like Harry and Ginny, but best friends to lovers, it's a classic trope. It's the trope that got us together. So you know what? I'm going to go with Ron and Hermione.
And my next couple is actually going to come from manga instead of just a normal book. And this comes from Berserk, and that would be Guts and Casca. Casca, obviously, so much happens with her character. If you've read the series, you know just how tortured she is. And if you have read the series, you also know the lengths that Guts has gone through to try to help Casca and get back to her. The drive that this man has to just keep going no matter what, and a large driving factor for a lot of that, while it is, yes, revenge, it is also getting back Casca to the form she was before the eclipse. Obviously, everything that happened with the eclipse, there's a lot of negative things that happened with Casca's character, and for a lot of the manga, she is a shell of herself. But there is great moments between them before that, and there are some really powerful moments later in the series revolving around Casca and how she comes back to herself, and just that's one of the most heartbreaking things I have ever read comes from Berserk and between these two characters, because you know how much Guts loves her. And I remember reading the chapter that I'm thinking of, and it is one of the most sad things I have ever read in my entire life. So, you know that these have an amazing connection because of the trauma they can bring you.
My next couple is for the millennials out there. Like me, you probably read this book in middle school or early high school, and it is from A Fault in Our Stars by John Green, and it is Augustus and Hazel. And when I first read this, I remember thinking, if a man wrote this man, then there are men out there that are like this in the world, and it gave me a little bit of hope. But just the way that they care for each other while also going through so much trauma, not really a spoiler, but they're both suffering from cancer, and having to go through that in your teenage years is a lot. And any of you that have had been touched by cancer in your life, you've dealt with that, you understand what it's like. But these two teenagers just navigating life together, and the relationship that they're able to build is so heartbreakingly beautiful and touching. And I wanted Augustus Waters to be my boyfriend when I was reading this. So yeah.
All right, next up on my list comes from a very underrated fantasy series for me. It is a little bit YA, though I think it does a really good job of incorporating more adult themes. It's really, the characters are like 18-ish, so while, yes, that's technically YA, it doesn't feel like the bad YA, where it's like very much aimed at younger readers. And that is the Aethelon Cycle. Starting, the first book is Fireborn, and the two characters I'm thinking of are Lee and Annie. Those are two of the main characters throughout the series. There is a lot of trauma between these two and things that have happened in the past. And then there's also a lot of tension between them throughout the books. You can tell that they really care for each other, but because of the situation they're in and things that have happened in the past, it makes them really difficult to get together and to really express how they feel. They are in a warring world where they feel like they can't express how they feel because it might affect things too negatively, and they feel like they are bigger things going on than the individual love that they want to share. And this is a super underrated fantasy series. I don't think a lot of people have read it, probably because it does have that YA tag, but Fireborn is a top 10 book for me all time. It is one of my favorite fantasy books ever, and so I think you should definitely give it a try, and this relationship is definitely a highlight of the series.
Sticking with great fantasy books, we're going to move over to my next couple from The Hunger Games. Now, probably one of the greatest battles of all time next to Edward versus Jacob is Peeta versus Gale. So I'm not even going to try to touch that in this video. That is a conversation for another day. So I'm going to go with a couple that's probably a little bit more palatable for most people, and that is Finnick and Annie. Again, this is a couple that have been together for forever. They have definitely built bonds through the trauma that they have experienced together, both being winners of the games. But the way that Finnick cares for Annie so tenderly. The trauma that the games have given her has affected her a lot more than it has affected Finnick, at least mentally. It's something that we can really see in her character, and Finnick loves her through it. They really are the definition of in sickness and in health and until death do us part. And I mean, it is just a beautiful story. Again, another one that if you read all the way through Mockingjay, you're definitely going to need to bring your tissues for it.
My next couple comes from one of my favorite science fiction series, The Expanse, and that couple is Holden and Naomi. So once again, this is a series that has a very strong female character in Naomi. She is extremely capable, knows what she wants, and doesn't really put up with a whole lot. And then you have Holden, who is much more wishy-washy and really kind of gets his feet put to the fire to figure out what he wants. And I don't know, I really liked the evolution of their relationship. It's, a decade-long tale in The Expanse, so you really get to see them as a younger couple go through a whole lot of trauma. And it's an amount of trauma that most people will never have to go through. Obviously, this is a fictional series, but it is just planet-scale disasters that they go through. They're out and out the darkness of outer space, dealing with all kinds of problems. And I think they are just a very powerful couple. And I really do like that even though they are together, they both still have their own agency. There's never just like this a culmination where they just come together and become one character. They are still very much their own people, which I think is a super strong aspect of The Expanse, that characters really do have their own voice, and even though they can be in relationships and they go through all of these things together, they never lose that individualness that kind of makes them great, and they do a really good job of highlighting each other.
All right, my last couple for the list this year in 2024 is another slight hot take, and it actually comes from a classic. So it comes from Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and that is Amy and Laurie. Now, I know most of you are going to say, but Jo and Laurie. Okay, I get it, but they're meant to be best friends. And as a Jo archetype myself, I completely understand why she chooses not to end up with Laurie. And the reason I think that Amy and Laurie are so good for each other is because they truly did get to watch each other grow up, and they know each other very intimately just in being in each other's lives for so long. And it's interesting to see how Amy can really calm Laurie down. Laurie's a little bit of a ne'er-do-well when Amy finally gets to him and they finally decide to become a couple. And just seeing the way that they can, move through life together is really beautiful. And I will fully admit that my view of this is slightly tainted by the new movie version with Florence Pugh and Timothée Chalamet, because I did see that before reading the book. But I still stand by it.
All right, and my last couple. This is probably a hot take to some people, and then other people are going to be cheering along with me, and that would be Edward and Bella. Now, I know the Twilight series is, something I read when I was like 12 or something, but for whatever reason, I still look back very fondly on it, and I was always Team Edward. I thought Jacob was a giant creep the entire time, never liked his character, and always wanted Edward to come back throughout the series, and was super happy when he did, and all of that. Do I think this is an extremely healthy relationship? No, this is obviously an extremely toxic, awful relationship that should not be emulated in any real life way. I mean, that's not the point though. The point is that I wanted them to end up together. I don't know if this would, be as good if I read it now. Obviously, I've grown a lot since I was 12 or whatever, but I don't know. It is still a couple I think back fondly of, partially because of I sped read the series and just, I don't know, was always Team Edward. And so I had to put them on this list, even though they are so toxic for each other.
13-year-old me certainly agrees. I was also very much Team Edward. And this is the point in the video where I embarrassed myself and let you know that I had Edward posters in my bedroom.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
And I wanted to mention one last couple for a friend of ours. I know this will absolutely infuriate her. And that would be, and this is a Wheel of Time spoiler. So big Wheel of Time spoiler coming up. But that would be Rand and all three of his wives. They're all great. I love all three of his wives, and with Rand in particular. Well, that is our couples list for the year of 2024. Let us know what your favorite couples are down below in the comments. And as always, have a good one.